The year is 1840. In France, the July monarchy of King Louis-Philippe I has been in power for a decade. It is a regime marked by peace and prosperity, but also by what many French citizens perceive as a stifling mediocrity. The romantic, blood-soaked glory of the Napoleonic era feels like a distant memory, and King Louis-Philippe is struggling with the lack of popularity. He needs a gesture, something grand, something unifying, something that connects his bourgeois reign with the epic history of France. Enter Adolphe Thiers, the prime minister. Thiers is not just a politician, he is a historian of the consulate and empire, deeply invested in what is known as the Napoleonic legend. He conceives a masterstroke of political theater, the Retour des Cendres, or the Return of the Ashes. The plan is to repatriate the mortal remains of Napoleon Bonaparte from his lonely exile on the island of Saint Helena and reinter them on French soil. The objective is threefold: to boost the king's standing by bathing him in reflected glory, to unite a fractured nation of royalists, republicans, and Bonapartists, and to finally reclaim the emperor as a legitimate national hero rather than a usurper. Surprisingly, the British government agrees. Lord Palmerston, the British Foreign Secretary, views the request as a low-cost diplomatic gesture. In May 1840, London gives its consent, hoping this will cement Anglo-French relations. It seems like a perfect diplomatic moment between the two countries, but history, as it often does, has a twist in store while the expedition to retrieve the emperor is still at sea. A massive diplomatic storm breaks over Europe, the Oriental Crisis of 1840. The source of the conflict is Egypt. The French-backed viceroy of Egypt, Muhammad Ali Pasha, has revolted against the Ottoman Empire and seized Syria since 1832. France had supported his ambitions, hoping to secure a powerful ally in the Mediterranean. However, after another major victory of the Egyptians over the Ottomans in 1839, the other great powers, Britain, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, feared the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. On July 15, 1840, just days after the French expedition set sail for St. Helena, these powers signed the Treaty of London to curb Muhammad Ali's power. Crucially, they exclude France. This is a profound humiliation for the French government. The mood in Paris shifts overnight. Prime Minister Thiers, the very architect of the return, responds with bellicose threats against Britain, referring to the old enemy as perfidious Albion, which was a Revolutionary-era pejorative phrase used to describe England's treachery and serving its own interests at the expense of other nations. Thiers orders the fortification of Paris, and a wave of nationalist war fever sweeps the country. Thus, a profound paradox emerges. The return of Napoleon's body was originally intended as a gesture of reconciliation between France and Britain. Instead, by the time the body actually arrives, it has transformed into a rallying point for anti-British sentiment. The crowds preparing to cheer for the emperor are no longer cheering for the martyr of St. Helena. They are cheering for the conqueror who once threatened to invade England. Fearing that this nationalism will lead to actual war, King Louis-Philippe forces Thiers to resign in October, replacing him with the more cautious François Guizot. The immediate threat of war recedes, but the atmosphere remains tense and fiercely nationalistic. Meanwhile, in the South Atlantic, the expedition proceeds unaware of the war fever gripping Paris. The frigate chosen for this sacred mission is La Belle Poule, painted entirely black for the occasion, a floating hearse. To lend royal legitimacy to the event, the mission is nominally led by the Prince de Joinville, the king's son. But the emotional core of the expedition lies with the witnesses, the surviving companions of Napoleon's exile. These include General Bertrand, General Gourgaud, the emperor's faithful valets, Marchand, and Saint-Denis, better known by the name Ali le Mamelouk. On October 15, 1840, exactly 25 years to the day after Napoleon arrived on St. Helena, his grave in the Valley of the Willows is opened. The French delegation fears that the British dampness might have reduced the emperor to a skeleton. They dig through the earth, removing the heavy stone slabs. They reach the coffin. In fact, there are 4 nested coffins, mahogany, lead, and tin. They cut open the final layer. A silence falls over the group. As the lid is pulled back, the witnesses gasp. The body is not a skeleton. It is remarkably, miraculously well preserved. Napoleon's features are instantly recognizable. His hands are white and soft. His uniform is largely intact. It looks as though he is merely sleeping. This moment of preservation is pivotal. It fuels the mystical aspect of the Napoleonic legend, suggesting that the emperor is effectively immortal, untouched by death or decay. The Belle Poule returns to France, docking in Cherbourg on November 30th. The government, terrified that the return of the body might spark a coup d'etat or riots in the streets, decides to avoid an overland journey. Instead, the coffin is transferred to the steamship Normandy, and later to a smaller gilded vessel named La Dorade to travel up the Seine to Paris. This river journey becomes a week-long climax. As the boat travels slowly up the Seine, the banks are lined with hundreds of thousands of people. Peasants, veterans in old uniforms, women and children stand in the freezing mud day and night. They light bonfires that cast a flickering glow over the water. Cries of "Vive l'Empereur" echo across the river. It becomes clear that the government has miscalculated. The fervor for Napoleon is far stronger, far more religious, and far more dangerous than they anticipated. Finally, the day of the funeral arrives, December 15th, 1840. It is bitterly cold, with temperatures well below freezing, yet the streets of Paris are packed with hundreds of thousands of spectators. The funeral procession is one of the largest public events in the 19th century. The hearse is not a simple carriage, but a massive gilded imperial chariot. Drawn by 16 horses, it stands 33 feet high and weighs 13 tons, a rolling monument of gold and velvet. The procession winds through the Arc de Triomphe, which Napoleon himself had commissioned, and down the Champs-Élysées. The veterans of the Grande Armée, old and grey, march alongside the hearse, weeping. The climax occurs at Les Invalides. The King Louis-Philippe waits to receive the body. The Prince de Joinville enters, followed by the coffin carried by sailors. He steps forward and speaks the scripted lines, "Sire, I present to you the body of the Emperor of the French." The king replies, "I receive it in the name of France." Inside the church, the ceremony is stiff and exclusive, dominated by the monarchy and the aristocracy. Many Bonapartists feel that the people have been shut out, that the king is trying to steal the emperor's glory while hiding his body away. And hide it. They do. The Grand Tomb, the famous red quartzite sarcophagus designed by Louis Visconti, is not ready. It will not be ready for another 20 years. For 2 decades, Napoleon's body lies in the side chapel of Saint Jérôme, a temporary resting place before finally being placed in the crypt under the golden dome of Les Invalides in 1861. In the end, the Retour de Cendres is a political backfire for the July monarchy. Instead of strengthening the king, the event revitalizes Bonapartism. It reminds the French people of the glory days of empire, casting a harsh light on the perceived mediocrity of the current reign. The resurgence of the legend sows the seeds for the future. It prepares the ground for Napoleon's nephew, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, to win the presidency in 1848. The ashes returned, but the fire of the legend burned down the house of the king who brought them back.